Hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Lionel. I'm your host for L2 Productions, and you are watching I Watch You Watch. Today, we are covering returning series Beauty in Black, currently streaming on Netflix. This is season 2, part B. I'm going to be reviewing episodes 9, maybe 10 on this video, but possibly it's going to be another video. But anyways, let's get started. I do appreciate everyone for coming to my channel. Like, comment, share, and that's all. Let's get into it. All right, so you know how it left off on last season back in November. Charles was getting robbed again. After he showed Varney what was going on, what he had did as far as filleting on them folks, well, the robbers came back. And of course, this time it looks like they are more successful. Charles recognizes the shoes of one of the robbers that got away, which was the same person that was the driver for Mallory during season 2A. They get the money and also watches out of the safe. After the robbers leave, Varney goes off on him and basically just said, look, you need to let all of this stuff go. You sit up here hooking up with strippers and stuff, and now look at where you are at in life. And it's time to let it go. So Charles said, let me go, let me go, Varney. Get out and let me go. And he said, your request, I'm going to do that. I forgot what exactly he said. But basically, cool. So as Varney's leaving, you got Charles with his stubborn tail saying, go, leave, just like everyone else, as you told him to do. And he's tired of your ish because you can't get it together. Whitman. Okay, this is after Kimmy came back to the house and sees that Jules' son is on the ground. Rain comes out there, and then also Alex. Kimmy wants an explanation. Rain said, let's go in the house and I'll tell you everything. Alex said he'll handle everything. He drives up to the main house, gets Whitman. That's the other butler driver he was in last season. I think he was the one that helped handle Roy when he came over to Horace's house, acting a fool. Anyways, Whitman says, I'll take him to the hospital, Jules' son. So he does that. Back in the house, Rain tells Kimmy what happened. She first thought it was an accident. She first thought that Jules' son, she saw him on top of Sylvie and thought that he was attacking her. But she tells her that it did not happen. Angel comes home from shopping, and of course, Rain is trying to get into his tail for leaving Sylvie as she was trying to take a nap. Kimmy goes to see Sylvie and just asks her what happened. And she wanted to make it clear, so he did not attack you, right? Meaning S.A., y'all. And she said yes. She talks about the whole incident. They were talking about the horses and all that. He touched her appropriately, and she kissed him, and then things started happening. And Kimmy was like, you just met him and you was ready to have sex with him? And she's like, well, look at your past and all that. You can't judge me. I mean, no, but it's total different situations, ma'am. No, don't do that. Anyways, Sylvie wants to see the guy. And Kimmy said, no, you cannot do that. And basically, as the teenager would, saying, no, I need to see him. You just met him. Like, you act like y'all soulmates. I mean, I don't know if you have been, well, you did get touched by the stepfather, right? But I mean, this was probably, I ain't saying it didn't count, but probably it never, I don't know. I need to stop before I get ahead of myself and put my foot in my mouth. But you mean a couple strokes got you like this? Because he didn't get the fit. Let me stop. Sylvie's like, even though Kimmy's trying to put her foot down, I don't have to listen to you. Like, you know what's going on here. You want to go out there in the big bad world, Sylvie? I mean, you were just picked up against your will and you couldn't fend for yourself. Someone had to rescue you out of the situation. So what are you talking about? I don't have to listen to you. Okay, Sylvie. Okay. Back at the office, Olivia visits Mallory. And Olivia's like, what are y'all trying to do around here? It looks like I'm going to have to handle things myself. Unless you have a plan. And Mallory said, I got a plan. What is it? I'm going to work with her. And Olivia says, you're pretty dumb. As if that's going to work. Why would you try to work with her? She's just doing it like that. You've seen how she was acting up in there like she owned everything. And Mallory's like, oh, it's just nerves. However, Olivia wasn't buying that. She goes out of the office in a tizzy, and And basically, Mallory's fed up with Olivia. Felicia calls Mallory. Felicia is at the strip club. She's the one that's now messing with Roy. Anyway, she says that she's got some tea, and Mallory wanted it right then and there, and she said no, and it's going to cost you. And you got to come to the club. Of course, Mallory didn't want to, but she said, well, it's pretty good. It's good. So finally, Mallory gives in and agrees. In Italy, Horace is with the doctor, and he tries to explain in a long way, but basically the treatments are working for him. They've been able to figure out a way to attack the cancer with radiation and not attack his body, because that's usually how it goes when you're getting radiation. So whatever they found over there to help him out, it's working. Horace is feeling stronger, but he did say that you're going to have to be getting treatment for a while, and it's going to be treatment 3 times a day. But anyways, there's a possibility for Horace to live. So how does that change the game? Will he? I don't. Do you think that he'll try to let Kimmy go at this point, or would he just really stick her by his side? Because it's still not a guarantee that you're going to live. And Horace, you're not 25. I mean, eventually you got to. And I think that you need someone by your side helping, in my opinion. Back in the Chicago area, Jules talks with Roy. Oh yeah, this is at the office. Jules visits Roy in his office, and they're trying to figure out what can they do about Kimmy. Roy thinks that he could hire Felicia to F her up. And they were like, you can't really touch her. So then he comes up with this theory of, let's try to send her over to Italy, because Roy knows that his dad is over in Italy getting treatment. How did he find that out? I don't know, because that was still supposed to be his top secret. But if they send her over to Italy, have the plane, boom, because I don't think I can say the word here on YouTube. But anyways, you know what I mean. Get rid of her. And still Jules is like, I don't think that's going to work. So he has another plan in mind, because he's got to get rid of his father and that bitch. Rain and Alex talk. That's the cop. Rain is still freaking out. Alex is trying to calm her down and said, let's wait and see what happens how things pan out before we have to say anything. Angel comes in and is going off on Alex and demands that Alex leave because he don't trust him. Jules calls them while they're sitting up here arguing, and Jules demands Alex come to the hospital. As Alex is leaving, again, Angel's like, we can't trust him. You better watch yourself. Varney comes home to his apartment, and guess who's there? Roy. Roy has this elaborate plan to blackmail Varney to stop this amendment to the will by blackmailing Varney to tell his dad in regards to him being gay, and whom he's been gay with his brother and Horace's son. And he said, my dad is the biggest homophobic out there. If only you knew. Yeah, on the surface, but there's something bubbling on the inside of him. Maybe I should do a shimmy? No, stupid. Anyways, he ends up getting Varney to talk to a file clerk, because it hasn't been officially showing up in the file records as of yet. Until it shows up in file records, then that means that it's not done. But I mean, if it's already been certified and stamped, it don't matter if it showed up in the system. They could always go back to the paperwork. Anyways, Varney, that's what I would think. But Varney calls the file clerk, and says, can you hold off, because he wants to add a few more things to the will. And they say, sure thing, da-da-da-da-da. So right now, since this is in limbo, at least is what Varney is saying and what Roy believes, as long as it's not filed, he can now, in Roy's mind, he can do whatever he needs to do to Kimmy, because what Jules was saying, remember, they are protected, but I think as soon as it's certified and signed, everything's good to go. All it needs is just the stamp that it's in the system and counting. So I don't get that. Whatever. Oh, but of course, Roy is still simple-minded, but smart at the same time. I don't get it. But anyways, Charles goes to Mallory's office, and he's just not doing really well. Mallory's like, look, we need to go to the club tonight. I want you to go. Charles said, no. Yeah, you're coming with me. Go back to your house, get dressed, and you're coming with me. He's like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And obviously she knows that something's up with him, so Charles leaves. Whitman's at the hospital visiting with Jules, and he asks, what happened? Whitman says, I don't know. Hold on a second. Do I have what I need? He dropped off Kimmy and he saw. After Whitman don't really have any answers, they're like, well, where's Alex at? Alex is coming up the elevator. Once he comes into the room, then Jules is asking him questions also. So what happened? I came and saw him laying there after dropping off Kimmy. So Kimmy wasn't there at the time? I don't know. He said no. But he did say that Rain was there. Did they know that that was my son? And Alex said, no. If you lying to me, no, I don't know anything. He also asked, why did Rain want you to drive her? He said, I don't know. Then he said, leave. But he's still in this threatening mode of if he finds out something else, it's his head. Mallory calls Varney and says, hey, I need to go to the club. And she said, come to my office. I need to go someplace. She doesn't tell him where he is going. But anyways, he ends up giving in and saying yes and going because he has to. He at least feels like he has to since he's an employee. Officer Traxon, that's the one that was effing Felicia last part A. And all that good stuff, the bald head guy. Anyways, he's tracking Mallory. He ends up telling Jules that this is where Mallory's at, which is at the club, the main club that we know about, with Varney. Do you know how much money Oh, wait. Before we get there, I'm sorry. Let me back up. We're still in Mallory's office. Officer Traxon comes in and announces that he is Mallory's new driver. What do you mean? What's going on? Da, 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 da. Long story short, she's got all these wisecracks and it's just so crazy. Do you know how much money I could get out of you back in the day? Look, I always heard that there was some black owners, if you know what I mean. She's light-skinned-ish. Light-skinned caramelish. I'm like, you too busy with this whole Jim Crow stuff, lady. But Officer Traxon, he plays her game and isn't moved by her and jokes along with her and says, how much? If you don't get out of here, you need to go. And then he was like, as he's going out the door, he's like, well, I'm here to help you any way you can. And then Mallory said, help yourself by taking a shower. So her thing is these smell things. Why don't you get a fragrance line, Mallory, since you're so into people's smells? All right, so Rain and Kimmy. They talk a little bit more about as far as what could be happening with Jules' son. Kimmy's like, well, I have to make sure that the will is done. And Rain was like, what do you mean? Isn't it supposed to be handled by the lawyer? And Kimmy's like, look, you can't trust nobody. And I have to make sure that it's done. And Kimmy fills in Rain that I did threaten Jules' him and his family earlier today, so they could be looking at him. Looking at her in this whole situation. Kimmy says that I'm going to have... Well, I think Rain says, you're going to have to tell Horace. And, of course, they agree to that. And then they get into Alex because Rain was like, well, I think that we're kind of good at this moment. And Kimmy's like, you trust Alex? She said, no, but we're going to have to give somebody some trust. I forgot who said we got to watch Angel. Oh, Rain said we got to watch Angel because he's getting a little too comfortable around here, you know. Back at Charles' home, he calls Olivia and says that he needs her, and to come by his place. Olivia comes by, and Charles gives her a couple drinks, and says that I need you to go in the back and look. And she's like, what are you talking about? What do I have to do? What's going on back there? He said, go take a look and come back. So Olivia goes back there and see all of the mess he made earlier. She comes back to Charles and takes another drink. And then she turns to him and says, your first time, huh? And Charles looked at her. Yeah, it's your first time. Said, Lord, Olivia. So she sends him away and says that, I got this. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I got this. Go on about your business, sir. So Traxon follows Mallory to the club. After they sit down, she tries to get Varney to loosen up, go have fun, go get one of these strippers. I see you eyeing somebody. Go to the VIP club or VIP room. And she says, I'm here for the source. And what she's trying to do is get Kimmy out of the office. Back at Charles' home, next thing you know, we see that light-skinned dude I found out later on his name is Andy. That's in the next episode. But anyways, that was the driver, like, for Mallory during season 2. I'm like, what is happening here? So, what was I gonna say? Yeah. So he comes back in. We find out Olivia set up the robbery towards Charles. I said, oh my. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. So I'm going to keep going with episode 10. Anyways, we get back to Olivia. And she said, you effed that up. The guy, Andy, ended up saying that he got 40,000. She's like, that's 40,000. Is that it? That's all he had. Well, you really effed it up. And you also effed up the robbery of Horace. I think we knew about that, but nobody, I don't know. Who talked about it? Was it Horace or was it Norman? I think it was Norman that said something to her. And Norman was the one that said, how much do you owe? And she tried to play dumb like she didn't know nothing. And now we know that she's in a hole. You're going to find out in the next episode, if you haven't gotten to episode 3, what's really going on with Olivia. Olivia makes the declaration that she owns the cops and says, how is Jennifer? That Jennifer is Andy's mother. After she talks about effing up Horace's robbery, she says, how is your sister? At this point, giving these implications that I'm going to F up your sister. We move from that scene. Jules and Roy. They're at the office. Jules says that he's got that itch by the balls, talking about Varney. I'm blackmailing him, and now the will is going to be held up and all that stuff, and I can do what I want. Jules is skeptical, but he says, look, I got it. And then he ends up saying, hey, I'm going to the club because I got something to do. And it sounds, well, we find out later on this episode and next episode, it looks like he had a plan and a plot. Back at Horace's mansion, Kimmy, Rain, Angel, and Sylvie, they are eating dinner. Sylvie asks, do you know how he's doing? Meaning Jules' son. They said no. And she asked, call somebody. And they said, no, we can't do that right now. And she wants to know what's going on. Angel was like, look, it's for the best not to know anything. And then she makes a smart remark about, so I'm supposed to trust strippers and 304s? Trust in strippers and 304s that think they know what's best for me? And of course, at that point, Kimmy's like, who you talking to, lady? You're going to respect us up in here. At this point, Sylvie's talking back like, well, you was doing it too? I mean, what do you mean? You was doing all this is totally different, da-da-da-da-da. And Kimmy said, I've been thinking, and I want you to go to school, to college. And Sylvie's like, I want to stay. Why? I mean, you staying here, so why stay here? Da-da-da-da-da. So you're going to push me off like mama? And Kimmy was like, no, don't tell me. I'm nothing like that woman. It feels like it. So Sylvia gets up from the table, upset and angry and all that good stuff. Charles visits Roy and says, hey, I needed you. Da-da-da-da-da. Oh, well, I wasn't there. Roy ends up gloating that he's got Varney by the scrotum. I think I can say that word. And Charles was wanting to know what that means. Don't worry about it. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, Charles ended up saying a good quote. You keep playing with brilliant people, they're going to show you how smart they are by showing you how dumb you really are. I know that's foreshadowing. I don't care. We go back to the club scene where Varney and Mallory are seated at. And Varney finds a stripper that he's eyeing. Mallory notices too. And he says that he thinks he's sexy. Mallory tries to talk gay lingo to Varney, but he's not really picking up what she's dropping off. And then he's trying to educate her on the difference from masculine and feminine energy, or masculine and feminine gaze, which is kind of outdated in a way. Somehow masculine people don't talk all the gay lingo and don't have all this feminine stuff. There are some and this is true, there's a lot of mask for mask men, meaning a masculine man is only attracted to other masculine men and not to the more feminine guys. She's trying to say, yeah, itch. And he was like, what? That's a term of endearment. Stop. and we don't like to be called itches. Okay. Um, Mallory said, look, I got a hair company, and it's greatly tied to the gay community. You can't tell me nothing about the gay community. At this point, Varney kind of lets down his guard a little bit more, and they find some common ground within this whole, like, she's basically saying, hey, I'm an ally to y'all. So, cool. So Felicia finally comes over to Mallory, and she's ready to talk. They go back to the back, and Mallory did not want to sit on the seat. So she gets a napkin to put on the seat. Oh, my Lord. Felicia was like, you got my money? Then Mallory's like, well, hood rat's always looking for cheese. I said, you funny. Or you think you funny. Felicia's high, and it's taking her forever to just say what needs to be said. Basically, she's telling her non-relevant news because it's not really helping to find out what exactly is going on. Kimmy knows I forgot what she called, but something. However, the guy is a whale, and the woman is known as something else. But anyways, Mallory's like, give me back my money. But then she starts mentioning Roy's first itch, Jillian. So we're finding out that Jillian was a part of the strip club, and I didn't know that because I think that's new. But Jillian, she was in the first season. And then she said, oh, wait, what? So she starts showing pictures of what Jillian, asking first how was Jillian described as, and then shows a picture of Roy. And she says, yeah, I know him, because she was describing his penis and all of that. And now I'm effing him. Who is he? And then Mallory said, that's my husband. Oh, my bad. He didn't tell me I was married. She said, I effed him good. I said, Lord Jesus. Lord Jesus. He's my whale now. And then Felicia gonna ask, so you mad? Mallory's like, oh no. I'm just sitting up in this club finding out that my husband is getting, no. Sarcastically. Anyways, Mallory tells her, I need you to call me when you are around him, or are going to be around him. And she said, oh, he coming to the club tonight. He is? Okay, bet. Olivia calls Charles and tells him that everything's cleaned up. And Charles was like, really? Yeah, I took care of it. But you know, this is going to cost you. I need $250,000. Mom, I ain't got it. You just got your dividend check. You don't have that? I said, no, it's gone. Drugs. That's what it's on. He's at Barney's place and comes in, gets a drink, knows he's not there, and ends up calling him. But Olivia was like, look, you're going to have to take care of your bill. He tries to get her to take care of it. He's like, no, I'm not taking care of it. I already cleaned it up. You can take care of it. That's crazy. Charles, a grown man that has money almost unlimited, but you spend too much. But anyways, Charles calls Barney and it goes to voicemail and says, look, I need to speak to you after you send him away for the 1,000th time. Okay. So the guy stripper that Barney had been eyeing, sees him out near the bathroom area and is trying to proposition him. And Barney said no, because he was like, it's going to cost you if you need me. And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm not paying anything. And then he was like, well, I need some legal help. So you're trying to trade. I was like, why you say trade? That's a different type of term that's used in the community. So I don't know what that means. It's like, we can be FWBs. You know what that means. Friends with benefits. So, yeah. Anyways, Barney's not really biting. Alex comes back to the house, tells him the update with Jules, and he just asked me a couple questions and he let me go. And I gave him and he told the responses of what he gave him. So y'all good, he tells Rain. And she's like, I don't know. I don't know who said look out for Angel. I think Rain ended up saying, I think we gotta look out for Angel. But anyways. And Alex is asking, why is Angel protected? And Rain says, you know, we are an effed up family, and you see one, you see all. So that's why he's being protected. But Alex is like, is that all? Yeah, what do you think is happening? He thinks that Kimmy is interested, or he thinks that Kimmy and Angel got something going on. That's furthest from the truth. However, I think he has an inkling that that's Horace's man. That's what I think. But he's just not saying it or letting on to it. Rain goes into the house and visit with Angel. Angel got all this expensive stuff on, and Rain is like, look, you need to slow down a little bit. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm going out to the club. She said, lay low. Rain ends up telling what she wants out of this whole deal. She wants to buy the club. You know, she's a hood rat chick, and that's what she is. She thought that she could go through Horace, and he's like, no, you gotta go through Delinda's son, Giovanni. She has a son, yeah. So you gotta go through them. And then Rain says, well, I'm coming with you, because he knows where Giovanni's going to be partying at. Norman calls Jules and wants an update on Judge Harold and Gloria. Remember the judge and wife, where Norman came by and then blew them up? It's been ruled as some type of gas explosion, and Norman wants to know why it's not on the news as of yet. And Jules says that, you know, we need to pace this out. And why would you? He's a judge. That means he's quite known. So that didn't make sense. But whatever. Norman buys it. He doesn't really question it. But he does notice Jules. And he sounds pretty down. And he's asking her, what's going on? Nothing. What happened and who did it? It doesn't matter. I got it. I don't know why Jules is keeping him out of it, but whatever. Oh, Roy arrives to the regular club. And the parking attendant or valet person was like, hey, you should go to the back and you can get taken care of really good. I guess Roy has heard about it, but he's never going back there. So it piqued his interest, but he's got to pay $500. He ends up going back there. Mallory and Varney's ready to go. And he's trying to get Mallory to go, like, and she's like, no, I'm still waiting on something right now. And he's like, it's about time for you. I think it's time for you to go, because right now it's bewitching hours. And she was like, what is that? Don't you see all these folks are having sex up in here? I never heard of bewitching hours. Cool. Rain and Angel, they go to a more high class club. Of course, he's paying valet like $300 and all that stuff. And they run into Giovanni. Rain and Giovanni have a conversation. You know, sell me the club. He's like, well, I don't own the building. And then he gets into, you know, I can't sell you really nothing because they won't let me get into the books. Rain says, look, I can get you up in there. And then he said, okay, cool. Tomorrow, we'll do it. So then they go back to turning up with Angel. Varney gets the car, and the stripper comes back out. And his tone has changed, and is like, I need your help. Of course, Varney's just really passing him off and all that. Anyways, Andy comes outside and tells the stripper, you better get back inside. At this point, Varney is kind of piqued in his interest to try to help him out or whatever, to contact him. But anyways, when Andy's voice is speaking, Varney gets a flashback. And he recognizes the voice of one of the robbers, which was Andy in the first place. And then Andy's like, why are you staring at me like that? Nothing. I forgot who Varney asked, but who is that guy? His name is Andy Mendelsohn. So back in the back, where Roy is at, he is having sex with another stripper. Felicia comes outside and said, She yanks that girl up out of there and said, go find your own man. She comes back over to Roy and says, you are mine. So she gets in position and Roy does his business. At the same time, Mallory is coming out of the club. And she sees Roy and Felicia getting it on. So then she goes over there and F's her up. I said, wow. So it's quite interesting, and it gets more interesting during episode 3. So y'all stay tuned. Y'all get that tomorrow. But I appreciate everyone for coming to my channel. How y'all liking the season so far? It's a little slow, but it's going to start picking up. Episode 3, I'm like, so you really are crazy, Mallory. That's how cray it is. So stop by tomorrow. Subscribe so you can get notifications, please. Like, comment. And until the next one, peace.